Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, I'm Susan, and I'm a college counselor and have read applications for a small liberal arts college and 2 research universities. My twins are recent college graduates.
Hi, this is Christina Lopez. I'm an enrollment strategy leader and founder of the Dean's Desk. I spent 20 years in admissions and financial aid, most recently as Dean of Enrollment Management at Barnard College, with previous roles at New York University. Today, I help families evaluate the true financial fit of every college on their students' list before they apply.
I'm Mark Stucker, and I'm the founder and producer. Our mission is to make college knowledge available to all. We care deeply about your kid. We believe college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. We believe in being genuine and transparent. We are committed to covering a variety of topics, including the tough subjects. Thanks to your generosity, we're committed to providing a minimum of 10 hours of fresh, commercial-free content every month, with episodes every Monday and Thursday. We have a variety of co-hosts because we believe and value diverse perspectives. You're our listening family, and we get great joy every time we meet with you, as we do our best to give you tools so your students can soar and reach their limitless potential. Good afternoon, friends. I'm really excited to meet with you guys today. A lot of you, I feel like you're my friends. I mean, I know you're not friends in like you're going to get invitation to a wedding, but I just feel the cyber connection. And that's one reason I'm always excited. I feel like I'm coming to a family reunion. I'm meeting with my friends. We have this kind of weird parasocial relationship. So it just always is invigorating to me. I've got a huge smile on my face right now, but I think today's even more special to me for 3 reasons. One, it's the big 650. That's right. I do get excited every 100th episode, every 50th episode. That's going to just get me a little bit more pumped and jazzed up. That's part of it. Another reason is because I really like episodes when we have a lot of different listeners that contribute. And we have quite a few messages we're going to play today. And that was also Trend 649. It really kind of reinforces to me that we're a listening family, we're a community. And I really want to thank everybody who sent in a speak pipe message, grinding my gears. And then it's kind of a new tradition. We started it at 500. We're episode 500. We had people share in a tip that had helped them. It didn't have to come from our podcast. Most of them did, but it didn't have to be. It's just something they've learned that they wanted to share with others. And I said, we're doing a new tradition, and we did it at 600. I liked it so much. I said, we got to do something halfway through. And so now, we're doing this grinding my gears here at mid 650. So kind of excited. I'm kind of a traditional guy. Got a new tradition here. And then I'm excited because I'm rolling out a big announcement today that I'm pretty jazzed and stoked about. And I'll get to that midway in the podcast. So today you're going to hear 4 different people that sent in the grinding my gears messages. And I'm going to give a little commentary afterward. And then I'll share that big announcement that I'm pretty stoked about. And then we're up to our 5th entry on the Chronicle series I'm doing on budget problems colleges are facing. It's a pretty short entry today, but they're all, I think, worth reflecting on and very insightful. I think they just did a fantastic job. Shout out to the Chronicle of Higher Ed for another fantastic publication. And then I think you're going to like this interview. So, friends, I recommend you share these interviews to people going off to college. I thought Lisa's 2-parter with Tricia Seifert was fantastic. And Micki Meyer is also really, really good. She's the assistant vice president of student affairs at Rollins. And she is largely credited for making Rollins the only Southern school to be identified as a change maker campus because of all the initiatives that she has implemented in her 20 years there. And we're focusing on the first 6 weeks of college, the importance of the first 6 weeks. And what do you do? What do you not do? It's like an hour and 20-minute interview, so it's going to run over 3 segments. But thanks to a professional friend of mine, you don't have to wait 3 weeks anymore. That'll go Monday, Thursday, Monday. You'll get it all within 8 days. So you heard part 1 of 3 today in regard to that. So that's what we've got lined up for you guys today. Without any further ado, let's dive right in. All right. Our first message comes from Nishant from Texas.
Hey Mark, it's Nishant from Texas. Congratulations to you and all of us in your extended family on the 650 episodes. You know, it really grinds my gears when you have admission officers and counselors say stuff like, let kids be kids and let them find their passions, and their mental health is the most important thing for parents to focus on, which is all fine and good until every one of the admits is a Val, has an ISEF award, and has published in 4 peer-reviewed journals. If they were really concerned about the kids' health, then selective schools should specify the minimum criteria, put the names in a hat, and then draw them out like in a lottery. But they won't do that because they are chasing prestigious kids, just like the kids chasing a prestigious university. Thanks for letting us vent, and here's to 650 more episodes.
So, Nishant, first of all, thanks for the congratulations. And you're one of those people that's been a big supporter. And, sometimes, you have these listeners who call in. I've never met Nishant, but he found out one of the college visits I was going to, and he said, if you'd like to meet my daughter, I can arrange it. And I had a fantastic meeting. His daughter is a complete rock star. I'm not going to say what school she's at because for confidentiality reasons, but first of all, thanks, Nishant. So let's talk about this. Before I do, I want to say something. Why are we even doing this in the first place? Well, part of it is I used to get a lot of feedback from listeners that said, one of my favorite things is your Grinding My Gears series that you do every now and then. Probably would never have done it, honestly, if I hadn't heard that multiple times. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I go all the way back to this sermon I heard in Texas, in Dallas, when I lived there. It was like 1991. And it was a preacher from Detroit who was visiting. And I never heard a preacher be that transparent before. He was so bold and so transparent and so divulging things that nobody else would really ever share in kind of a pulpit type of format. And so I had to go up to him afterward and said, I'm really inspired by your transparency, by your realness, by your authenticity. And he said something to me that I'll never forget. He said, there's a lot of people that are hurting out there. And when you're on a ship and it feels like the ship is sinking and you feel all alone, that's a very painful place to be. But when you find out there's somebody else on the ship who can identify what you're going through, all of a sudden you feel like there's help and you feel like there's hope. So that never, ever escaped me. And I sort of try my hardest to pattern myself after that in my own personal and professional life. I try to be as gut-wrenchingly honest as I can be. Sometimes I think I can be more honest, but I'm trying to work on that and take it to the next level every year. So that's a little bit of the history. For those of you who are wondering why you're doing Grinding My Gears, it's partly listener feedback, and it's partly my belief that if you're feeling aggrieved or you're feeling rankled by something, and then you find out I'm not the only one, there's an empowering aspect to it. All right, let's get to Nishant's message. I totally understand what Nishant is saying, especially at the highly selective schools. Like, you can listen and you can feel like you have to walk on water to get in. Or maybe it's not even the messaging. Maybe if you're attuned to who gets in and who doesn't get in, and you're seeing who gets in, and you're feeling like, gee, all these kids that are getting in just have like ridiculous accomplishments. And then at the same time, schools are talking out of both sides of the mouth. Let kids be kids and don't overprogram and make sure you look out for their mental health. I totally, totally get that. Now, part of me being real is I'm going to say when I agree and disagree with something. So I don't agree with Nishant on why don't you just pick a lottery and draw from a hat. The reason why I don't agree with that is because whole person admissions, which is a better term really for holistic admissions. I mean, that sounds so, gundabiga, whole, theoretical. Like, what's that, right? But whole person admissions means we're factoring in the whole entire child, the whole entire student, and we're taking context into consideration. when you do that, or if you work inside an admission office, I don't care who you are. I think I've shared this with you before in the podcast. I look at a lot of data that we have in the company I started. The hardest two schools to get in are MIT and Harvard. I'd say they back and forth, depends on the year, which one feels harder to me. So let's just use those as examples because to me, they're the hardest two. I can guarantee you this, and I've even had conversations with both of those schools about this, so I'm not just surmising here. There are aspects in their student body where they wish they had more of a certain kind of kid. They feel like they'd be a better school if they had more blank kids. You know, Susan said something really profound, and I don't know if people caught it. It was around 6 months ago. Susan Tree, our co-host, she said, when you're looking at a school, try to find out who they want more of. I hope you guys didn't miss that. Now, that doesn't mean that if you don't feel like they want more of you, that you don't apply. If you're, you like the school and you're a reasonable applicant, but it's still important. So every school has, for lack of a better word, gaps in their student body where we would be a better school if we had more of blank types of kids. And it's going to vary from school to school, right? It could be more guys, or it could be more ladies in engineering, or it could be more people from rural locations or parts of the country, or it could be parts of the world. It could be certain majors. It could be certain interests. It could be certain personal qualities. So the idea of, and many more, by the way, I just listed a few that popped in my head. So the idea of like a random drawing of a lottery, that doesn't work for me. I think one of the best ways to understand admissions is to think of the hiring process. If you're, in charge of hiring for a company, you don't just say, okay, whoever has the highest SAT, that's who I'm going to admit. No, you're trying to look at who's going to fit into the company, who has a skill set, who's going to get along with everybody, who meets your needs. And you wouldn't want to just hire people off a lottery. And if it's a super selective process where you have like 200 applications for 10 spots, you wouldn't want to do that because you know exactly what you feel your institution needs in order to be stronger. So I don't agree with that, but I definitely agree with the rest of the. So what are some of those things in the rest of the things Nishant said that kind of I agree with? Well, one thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is some schools do this, but not very many do. One type of diversity that you don't often hear talked about is different types of learners and even different levels of learners. Like, who's to say having all super high achievers at a highly selective school is the best way to put together a student body? That's not how everybody's going to be in the real world. Why not have more of a range of kids? And then schools may not feel the need to do some of the things Nishant's saying that, that tick them off. And, one of the ways in which I've changed is I've come to respect the mindset of public schools. I have to explain that and unpack that. I used to be very frustrated sometimes when I was working with a lot of students that I used to work with that would go off to boarding schools. I've worked with lots and lots of kids going to boarding schools. One year I had 27 kids go to boarding school. 1 year. And because for one, when I was first hired at KIPP, they wanted me to send kids to the leading boarding schools around the country. That's first why they brought me in. And then I morphed into the director of college placement job. And then even when I started my company, the first 6 years, it was half boarding, half college. And then the last 11 years, it's been like 99 college. That's been intentional on my part. But anyway, I would notice that certain kids wouldn't get in. Like, I'm going to give University of Georgia as an example. I'd have kids that, I could think of a kid, for example, that went to Phillips Exeter boarding school, to Princeton, didn't get in University of Georgia. Another kid went to Choate Rosemary Hall, got in places like Emory and Washington, St. Louis, didn't get in University of Georgia. And then I used to reach out to them and say, what's going on? Like, these are extraordinary kids, and what was it that they didn't have? And one of the things they would say to me, and I used to have no respect for it before, but I get it more now. Well, the kids that go to those schools have every type of advantage imaginable. we're trying to take kids from a wide range of different locations, right? So one thing I do like that Georgia has, the state of Georgia, if you're the valedictorian or the salutatorian, you automatically get into Georgia and Georgia Tech. Your school has to have, I think, don't quote me on this, but in fact, I'm not going to say the number because I might get it wrong. There's a minimum number of students. So you can't start a brand new school of 5 kids and then just say, okay, this kid's number 1, this kid's number 2. Now one goes to Georgia, one goes to Georgia Tech, or they both go to Georgia Tech or whatever, right? There is a minimum number, but still. And I see this with UVA, right? Like, I'll tell you a funny story. I was working with a client, and the client went to UVA themselves, the parent. And then the client went to UVA at the same time the president of UVA was there. So parents do what parents do. You're going to try to do everything you can for your kid, right? So the parent reached out to the president at UVA and, hey, remember me? We go back, blah, blah, blah. Like, any word you can put in, my kid's going to be applying. And then the president of UVA said, I don't know what to tell you other than, why don't you move to Roanoke, Virginia? This was an out-of-state student. So what's the point? Like, colleges want kids from all places. And a lot of times people don't understand that. In fact, I've heard some other college counselors be incredibly critical. Like, and I probably was at another time in my life, right? Like, why are you not taking these kids from this school? Like, the kids are all extraordinary. But colleges are saying, yeah, but we want talent everywhere. Phillips Exeter, 25% of the kids have over a 1550 SAT. At Gunn High School in Palo Alto High School, some of these places, you see like 32 ACTs, very common, average SATs in the 1400s. But yet you see admit rates to places like UCLA and Berkeley, like 1 in 12. A lot of people think that's not fair. But then the schools are saying, yeah, but you're coming from a place of privilege with resources, privilege with the education and the income of your parents and how they've been able to set you up for success. We want talent from everywhere. We don't think talent only resides in one zip code. And so, yeah, somebody else may not have the numbers you have. It may look on good as paper, but they probably would be just as accomplished if they had the opportunities you had. And we want their talent too, and we want their voice. I find public schools do a better job than private schools at that. UCLA, Berkeley, UVA, UGA, and many others. So that's one thing I think that could happen. I don't want to shout out public schools for doing that, but I totally get the frustration because it is doublespeak, right? You say one thing, but then for schools that are only admitting certain kids that look certain ways, yeah, that is hypocrisy, and it has a right to grind Nishant's gears. So thanks for sharing that, Nishant. All right, next we have a message from Natash.
Hi, Mark and team. My name is Natasha. I'm a longtime listener from Seattle. Wanted to add one thing that to your Grinds My Gears episode. One thing that stands out to me in this most recent proliferation of AI, and thank you for the in-depth discussion on your podcast. It was very interesting. One thing that really, really makes me almost angry is that colleges ask kids to forego their summers and be very thoughtful and put a lot of time into writing their essays, as well as selecting teachers for their recommendations. And then they use AI to summarize and maybe spend 2 minutes as a human to actually look it over. So, in my view, that is really doing a disservice to all the hard work and the stress that our kids put into the thoughtfulness and, word selection and just really working hard on presenting themselves in an essay. I would think that if colleges only are going to spend 2 minutes on actually a human assessing it and writing it, then it's assess and reading it, then it's not that important to them, and they should just instead of asking for an essay, forgo that, and maybe asking for a recommendation instead of that, doing a short questionnaire. Is the student accountable? Is the student thoughtful? Yes or no, so that teachers and students can also put in um, a similar amount of time and not stress out so much about it, not to forego so much of their personal time during the summer, especially for kids, and put in so much work. Thank you so much. And Appreciate everything you do for the podcast. Thank you.
Natasha from Seattle, thank you for your kind words, longtime listener. And in some ways, there's some similarities, right? Like the message here talks about lots of time that kids pour into their essays, pour into them. And then you find out that it's just being AI summarized and someone's reading in a couple minutes. Like all that work. And you feel like, why? Why am I doing all this? Some ways you could almost say these messages sound similar, right? Like, I mean, Natasha didn't say just go to a lottery system, but it's like, what's the purpose? Why are you putting our kids through this? So here's a few things I want to say, though, in response to this. You're partly getting your wish, Natasha. You really are, because a lot of schools, and this is something we're going to talk about more coming up, are dropping their custom prompts. It's a major trend this year in 26, 27. I mean, it was a big splash last year when the University of Virginia said, no more custom prompt. If you're new to the podcast, that's my term. You'll hear me use that interchangeably with college-specific essays for what most people call SUPs. There's a admissions vernac for you, SUPs, which is an abbreviation for supplementals. And I use it because I want to give them their respect. And you oftentimes will hear colleges say, people write a beautiful personal statement. And then you get to the SUPs and you're just so disappointed. And I think it's partly because of the terminology we use. Like we diminish them. You need to call something. If I talk about the supplemental tire in my car, I'm talking about the spare tire. It's not like the main tire, right? Anyway, enough of that. That's just my little soapbox. So here's what you should know. This year alone, University of Georgia, no more custom prompt. I mean, I talked with David Graves about how much I liked their last custom prompt and how much they liked it compared to the previous one. Tulane. Sean Abbott has come out publicly before they dropped it and said the essay's just not carrying as much weight anymore when I read an app. And then this year, no custom prompt. TCU got rid of theirs in 2026. WashU's getting rid of theirs in 2027. There's a rumor out there the UNC is going to do it. I haven't heard that yet. But I'm convinced not all the announcements are out yet. And there are going to be more schools that are going to announce it. I'm not going to say it's going to be an avalanche, but I think we haven't heard all the 2027 announcements yet. And by the way, this isn't just new. Colby College, Case Western Reserve, Middlebury, Grinnell, Colgate, Northeastern, Kenyon, Oberlin, Bates, Clemson, Ohio State, Drexel, like schools have been dropping these. Why? Lots of reasons. One, AI, no longer confident that it's truly the student's work. Secondly, parent and or college consultants' fingers all over the essay. So how much of it really is the student's work anyway? By the way, I think these are legitimate reasons. Another reason, major, many of the colleges, Natasha, would love to do what you're saying, but here's what happens out there. Someone has once said it's not hard to get into college. I mean, the average college has a 73% acceptance rate. The problem is all the colleges that kids that want to go to are the hardest to get into. So it's like being on the freeway and there's an exit ramp that's closed down. So now everybody's trying to get off on another exit ramp and it's creating a logjam of traffic. So that's really the reality. So what does that mean? Those colleges are getting double, triple, quadruple the number of applications they used to get. And while that's all happening, it's not like they're getting double, triple, quadruple the budget to hire more people to read. And by the way, this is not a new phenomena. Sometimes I tell these stories and I hope they're helpful, but I kind of fear they age me, but hopefully this one is more helpful than aging me. So one thing Susan used to let me do, which I used to love, I never told her no. When I was at Westtown, when you're at a boarding school, people can come in and do evening presentations because the students live there. So you'd get people that come in, they'd actually have dinner with the students sometimes in the dining room, and then they do an evening presentation in the South Room. And anytime ever Susan wanted me to take that, I would take it, or a lot of times I would join her. So I can remember Brown University coming through and doing an info session with, students. And then, afterward, kind of like chit chat with the rep a little bit. And it's kind of fun. Sometimes they say, hey, tell me about a little bit more about the kid at the San Diego Charger, shirt on. Or it's just interesting, the stuff they would say. But I was talking to this Brown rep, and we were going on, and I was like, how's the job going? And one of the things he said is, I already had 1,200 applications that I had to read, and now I'm going to have to read 1,400 or 1,500 this year. And it's not like you get more money or you get more time. So this is like 2004. So that's like 22 years old. So this is not necessarily a new phenomenon. So just understand there's this dynamic of way, way, way more work, and there's not money in the budget to hire more readers. So there's a lot of factors, but there's a couple things I want to say. College admission offers would love to have the time to put 15 minutes in on an application. It's not really them that are the source here. And I also should say this. There are schools that still have that. It's not very many, but there are some. There are some schools where they're still taking 12, 15 minutes to read. And also one thing, when you read, and you're reading over 1,000 apps a year, average admission officer can probably read an app as well in 7 minutes that would take a first-time person like 25 minutes to read it, because you just get really, really, really good. So there are a few factors. It's not the college's fault at all. The admission office, I mean. There's a lot of factors. Some of it is budget related. Some of it is AI. Some is parents and IECs, fingerprints all over everything. Some of it is trying to protect the mental health of your staff and try not to have too much turnover because you're overworking them. And friends, there is another reason why some schools are dropping their custom prompts. I'd be remiss to not mention this. I'm going to give you this reason through a real story. So as a student I was working with this year in the Pacific West, and she was not thinking of going to this college at all. But then she looked and she saw they had no application fee and they had no custom prompts. She said, why not? I've already got the application done. No app fee, no custom prompt. I literally need to just submit. To make a long story short, this student got in so many schools with so many great packages. That student is going to that college next year. So colleges are aware of this. So in some cases, there may be a lot of pressure from the people you report to, board of directors, provost, faculty, then just inherent pressure from guides. And, then there's just that sort of informal pressure of alumni and current parents, past parents, students watching your numbers like a hawk, judging if you're more successful based on if you got more apps or if your admit rate goes down. It's a known fact that colleges know they can get more applications if they make it easier. So I can't also neglect that, sharing that as a reason. May not be the reason for an individual school, but in most cases, bringing in more applications is rewarded in this process, and making the app easier leads to more applications. So there are a number of things going on, but I thought it was a great entry, and I really appreciate you sending this in, Natasha. We're happy to have you as a listener, so send in some more messages. All right, next, we have a message from a mom from Pennsylvania. Let's take a listen.
Hi, I'm a mom in Pennsylvania, and something that really grinds my gears is on social media, when people ask questions about colleges, you can just see in the comments how some people completely disregard the lived experience of other people and say that their own experience is the only way. You really need to take a big grain of salt when looking at the recommendations from other people on social media.
All right. I'm going to 100% agree with this. There is a psychology online that's just nasty. I don't know if people just have like frustrations in their life or their family or their personal life, and they kind of get off like putting people down. But I used to frequent message boards quite a bit. Like we're coming now into our, oh my goodness. I just realized something. We moved from Westchester. Oh my goodness. We moved from Westchester, Pennsylvania to Fairburn, Georgia on June 15th, 2009. And what I just realized is past June 15th. That means I'm going into I've lost track, my 18th year here. Anyway, this is back when I was in Pennsylvania. I used to be on message boards a lot. And I got off some of them for this reason. Like, who needs that nastiness? some of it is invalidating people's experience is that Natasha talked about, but some of it is just diminishing other people's opinions that don't agree with people. It's almost like people feel like they get vindicated or validated if they can put down others. Now, not everybody's like this, but it's an interesting psychology of being anonymous and how people can behave in a way they would never behave in a face-to-face conversation or even a phone conversation. So totally agree with that one, Natasha. All right. Last one we've got here, and then I want to make one other comment. So this one from a mom from Texas. Let's take a listen.
Hello, everyone at Your College Bound Kid. I first have to say your podcast is simply incredible and you offer so much wonderful information free of charge to so many families and help us all greatly in this process. So I want to thank you so much. I'm calling from Texas, and what is grinding my gears about college admissions is, the amount of flyers and mailers received from places that they will probably never get into. And the amount of waste that goes on in that process is kind of unraveling. And this has nothing to do with admissions, but then once your child does get into college, the amount of loan information that gets bombarded our way is just kind of ridiculous and overwhelming. And for students who maybe don't have as much financial understanding, I feel like those loans are sort of like credit card flyers that they'll also get inundated with once they step on campus and whatnot. So that's what's grinding my gears. Thanks so much.
Oh my goodness. Do I ever understand where you're coming from? Friends, one of the things that I really like to do is just interesting to me. There's two sides to admissions, right? Both sides of the desk. We call it both sides of the desk. There's the sending side when you're on the counseling side, and there's the receiving side when you're at admissions. You're taking apps in and evaluating them. And that's oftentimes the term we use inside admissions. Oh, so flip to the other side of the desk. Think of it as two sides of a coin. So one of the things that I personally enjoy doing is talking to admission officers about what is it that you didn't know until you went to the other side of the desk. Now, this is almost always people that went from the admission side to the counseling side, from the admission side to the counseling side. And one of the things that I can remember very clearly having a conversation with somebody who's in a very senior level role in one of our professional organizations. I'll just leave it at that. And he just hung his head when I asked this question. And then he said, I cannot believe the amount of mail we were sending to these kids. Like, now that I'm on this side and I see how much they get, what were we doing? So this is true for emails. Somebody could easily send in a grinding my gear over all the emails you're getting. Okay, direct mail. But you brought up a lot of really good ones as well. I mean, student search drives all that stuff, right? Sweepstake entries, you register for the SAT, PSAT, you go onto niche, you go into College Board, you enter your name, and you just fine print in there. Is it okay if we contact you? That's a huge part of the whole core of the recruitment process when it comes to like solicitation, college mail. But you brought up a lot of other good stuff, like the lending. I don't know if anyone's ever said that here. There are lenders out there like Earnest and College Ave and Discover and Sally Mae and SoFi. They are going to bombard you. Remember, we're still in capitalistic America, and people know that people will do almost anything for their kids. So for some people, they just sniff dollars and they smell it. Yeah, no, that's a really good one, and thanks for sharing that. All right, this has been great. Thanks for all of you who participated. I want to share one other one. You're not going to hear a verbal message, but Hillary and I did QFL, a question from a listener. It was a dad from Cincinnati, and he was talking about how his college is saying that the student profile is confidential, and it's between the school and the colleges. And you guys always talk about get in the school profile. Like, how aggressive should I be? Is it not going to be in my best interest to push back? Or should I just let it go? And Hillary and I both said you should let it go. One of the things Hillary brought up, I know you're a school, you're fine, but that did not settle well with listeners. And while people didn't leave a speak pipe message, one sent a message to me, I'm so tempted to do a grinding my gears off this. And two others sent me messages. I didn't like that. One of them even said, they started quoting some law of how they have access to stuff by so-and-so, and even the number and legislation that schools can't do this. It's violation of blah, blah, blah. Here's what I want to say. A lot of times things happen that are in the individual student's best interest, but it wouldn't be healthy for the culture of the school if everybody knew everything. I'm just going to give one example. Class rankings. Class rankings are generally toxic. Why are they toxic? They pit one student against another. They lead to unhealthy mental health where kids are trying to skip their lunch to get another AP so they can climb over and move up in the rankings. So they're generally toxic. And if you listen to my last time Heath Einstein was on, Texas is notorious for their rankings, right? Because of the fact that they auto-admit to UT Austin, top 5%, and then the other schools like UTSA, San Antonio, and Dallas, and Arlington, they auto-admit Texas A&M for top 10% of the class. So it creates a whole system based on rankings. And he talked about a lot of schools are moving away from that. They see less rankings now than they used to. So what some schools do is they don't want the rankings to be known inside the school because it can breed toxic school culture. But when you're in admissions, the more a school gives you information about your school, the more that school becomes a priority school. You're more likely to get visits. You're more likely for us to understand the applications and to just make you a priority school, because admissions is about risk reward. And if you're helping me assess the risk and giving me good information on the reward, you're going to become a priority school. That was one of the first things that I did when I moved from Pennsylvania to Atlanta. Was I significantly increased the information that we were sharing with schools, because I knew that would make me a valuable partner for them. And then we got all these visits. Like nobody's coming like before. They're coming like crazy in droves. So I just want you to know there are some things that would adversely impact school culture if everybody knew them. But your school really is setting your kids up for success and for your school to be prioritized, which only helps more kids get placed. And I'll just leave it at that. I gave one example of rankings. There are many others as well. All right, friends, let's transition to my big announcement. So I've been wanting to tell you guys about this for a while, and I have kind of dripped and drabbed it out a little bit. I hate to ever overpromise and underperform. I always aim to underpromise and overperform. And I'm a little upset at myself because I had a number of volunteers who came forward to agree to do mailings, thank you mailings to donors and to interviewees. And I said, you should have something by the end of May. And it hasn't happened yet. It took me a lot longer to figure out what products to order. And then they were on delay. And, now they're all here. And that's my project tomorrow, is to put those packets together for those individuals and send them out with the thank you gifts and everything. But it's bothered me because I felt like I overpromised and underperformed. And I didn't want to do that on this. But let me get to it. We are launching a YouTube channel. Now, I'm not going to make the same mistake. I'm not going to tell you the exact date, but I will tell you this is going to be in July. And July is really here soon. Why are we doing it? Well, there's a number of reasons we're doing it. I talked about transparency and honesty, right? Let me be honest. This podcast grew like crazy for the first 6 years. We went from 212 downloads to 40, like most months, 45,000, 47,000, around that. But we've kind of plateaued the last few years. And I've realized we can't just rely on word of mouth. We got to step up our game if we're really, truly going to carry out a mission of making college knowledge available to all. And 3 of the volunteers who came forward that are helping us, all fantastic. I'm so grateful for them. They've been telling me about the importance of video, like podcasts are moving more to video. And I look at my own self. If there's an audio podcast or it's on YouTube, I'm going to watch it on YouTube. I really am. Like, even if I'm working, even if I glance up like for a few seconds, it's just kind of nice to be able to see people. Now, we're not moving the whole podcast to YouTube. We're looking at primarily having extra content on YouTube. Yeah, that's right. Monday and Thursday, still not enough. There's more stuff to talk about, and so I'm not saying we'll never have something on both the audio version and YouTube, but it's mostly going to be new information. Now, part of what I'm going to say, this is new, right? And when something's new, it can evolve. So what the channel looks like in two years may be a little different from now, but here's some of the things that you can expect on the new channel. I'm doing 2 series right now. And when I say doing, like, we've already recorded some of these segments. So remember I told you I was going to have a grinding my gears on this episode? I started writing them down and writing them down and writing them down. Next thing you know, I had 15 things that colleges do that grind my gears and 15 things that parents and students do that grind my gears. And then in the last week, I thought of 2 more. So I'm doing a whole grinding my gears series on YouTube. And if you listen to the things that grind counselors' gears about students and parents, that's a good thing to learn not to do. If you listen to what colleges do, I think that's just curious. That's just a curious thing, and people can be insightful, find that insightful as well. And maybe it'll be empathetic for them if they're also experiencing that. Some of it's going to be myself with our podcast hosts. I've already recorded 6 episodes with Christine and Susan, and I've got recordings coming up in the next 10 days with Hillary, in the next 7 days with Vince, Carter in the next 10 days. Okay. I mentioned to you, like, Julia is on a sabbatical, but Julia's looking forward to doing recordings on this when she comes off her sabbatical. And so that's one series. Then, I wrote a book called 107 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions. I wrote it 11 years ago. I'm doing like an updated one, not 171, but what are the most frequently asked questions that we get as counselors? Like Carter and I are doing a recording on that coming up, and several others as well. So we're just going to take the most frequently asked questions. So we'll do some of that. You guys know how I would come on here and I would riff sometimes. I would just do a soliloquy. Usually on Monday's episodes, I'm going to have those on YouTube now. Yeah, that's where I'm just going to talk about things I'm passionate about. So sometimes I'll go solo. Sometimes it'll be Q&A. And then sometimes we'll have a long form, like longer interview. I got an interview coming up here in 5 days with Bill Deresiewicz, New York Times bestselling author of the book Excellent Sheep. How former professor at Columbia and Yale. He's also got a new book out, The End of Solitude. That's going to go up on YouTube. Now, sometimes YouTube stuff will just go up first on YouTube, and then it'll eventually be on the audio podcast. And sometimes it'll be exclusive YouTube content. But most of the stuff's going to be exclusive YouTube content. We haven't even named the channel yet. I'm thinking about Your College Bound Kid Extra, because we already have YCBK Plus for the newsletter. I'm thinking, Your College Bound Kid Extra, but that's not confirmed yet. Yeah, there's somebody managing this whole thing, and we just want to bring extra content. We want to reach more people. And so if you want to help us with this, there's 2 things you could do. Well, there's 4 things you can do. 2 times 2, 4. When it comes to YouTube algorithm tracks several things, right? Subscribe, like, share with others, and ring the bell. Because when you ring the bell, then you automatically have new notifications pop up in your feed. Oh, and there's one other thing. It measures whether you stay on it all the way to the end, too. And if you stay on it all the way to the end of the video, then it puts that type of content. It's actually quite sophisticated. I've been studying their algorithm. I'm pretty brilliant people put this thing together. It looks for other people that want that kind of content, and that feed, it'll pop up into their feed. But we're trying to reach as many people as we can and get the word out, and you could help us a lot. I'll have more to come on this. I'm very excited about it, and I really appreciate all your support. Some of you don't realize how much you moved me when you'd send in messages like, I wish you had a daily podcast. I'd listen to twice a week is great, but I'd listen to more. So yeah, you're going to get more, and it'll be on YouTube, and should have an announcement coming up really, really soon when the we're officially launching and when the first video's up. But I can say we've already recorded 6 of them. Oh, one other thing. A lot of them are going to be shorter on there. There's going to be a lot of like 8 to 18 minute type things. Oh, and one other thing. We're going to take some questions for a listener on there as well. And so if you're sending in a question for a listener, speakpipe.com/YCBK, you could literally say, can you do it on YouTube? If you want, and we'll do it on YouTube. So yeah, we're starting to build up the little database now, and we'll have an announcement really soon. All right, friends, let me read the 5th entry of the Chronicle. Once again, How Bad is Higher Ed's Budget Crunch is the title. This one today comes to you from Catherine Hill. And Catherine is president emerita of Vassar College. And it's short but powerful. It's called Collaboration is the Way Forward. Unlike other sectors of the economy, in which competition increases quality and reduces price, in higher ed, competition actually pushes up costs. Colleges compete for a limited number of full-pay students interested in increasingly expensive academic programs and amenities. For the colleges that fail to enroll enough of these full-pay students, cost control becomes imperative to survival. And yet that is easier said than done. Why is it so hard to control cost? In part, it's a collective action problem. If one college controls costs and their closest competitor does not, then they may lose students, which can only worsen their finance. In this case, the best solution is both colleges controlling costs. But such collaboration is difficult. In fact, on some department issues, such as reallocating merit aid to need-based, the Department of Justice has even invoked antitrust laws. So an example of this would be dorms, right? Like you wish you could control your costs, but if all your competitors go in a suite style and apartment style, and you're still doing the old corridor traditional style, and then in your refusal surveys, people say, I don't like your dorms, you feel like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. We don't have the money to expand and take out this big loan to build new dorms. But people keep telling us, I don't like your dorms, and that's why I'm not coming. So that's an example. All right, this is what she goes on to say. For some small private liberal arts colleges most at risk, collaborating to rein in costs is the path forward. They should join together on technology solutions to lower costs and make additional curricular options available. On commitments to job readiness and on offering credits for internships or other experiential experiences, if colleges take these steps together, they have a great chance of being perceived correctly as innovation in service of affordability. Catherine Hill, President Emerita of Vassar College. Next up, we've got an article by Mary Marcy, and it's called Adapt or Die. That's strong. Adapt or Die. The president emerita of Dominican University in California and a senior advisor to the president of Council of Independent Colleges and chair-elect of WAC, Senior College and University Commission. So that's up next. All right, friends, let's transition to the brand new interview with Micki Meyer, the AVP at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. And our title of this interview will be The Importance of the First 6 Weeks of College, and it's a 3-parter.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, I'm very excited to bring Micki Meyer to you. Micki is the Assistant VP for Student Affairs at Rollins College, and Micki has played a major role in having Rollins become the first college in the South to be named a Change Maker College. And there's not that many of those in the world, by the way. So in part 1, Micki gives an overview of her role at Rollins College and her background, various roles, jobs she's had. Micki talks about what students need to do over the summer before they arrive in college as freshmen. And she shares her 5 S's with us. Micki tells us what a student needs to do to get the most out of the summer orientation before they even start college. Micki gives an overview of what a student needs to do to get the most out of the first 6 weeks of college, which, by the way, that's our overall theme for this interview. Micki gives tips for how a student can get involved in their college. Micki gives advice to the student who's struggling in their first year and they're not happy. What advice does Micki have for them? Take a listen. And finally, Micki tells us the group of students who struggle the most in the first 6 weeks of college. Listen and enjoy. Friends, I am very excited. I'm here with Micki Meyer from Rollins College. And Micki is a student success expert. Do you know that's what the internet calls you?
I love it.
I think it's a good encapsulation of what you do. But why don't we start by letting you tell our listeners a little bit about your background?
Sure, Mark. Well, I'm just so excited to be here to share a little bit today. A little bit about me. I have a 25-year career in higher education. What calls me to this work is I truly believe that higher education is about higher application. And it's thinking about, the knowledge, skills, and values that students learn while they're on campus so that they can put that education out to work in the world. As a student, I'm originally from upstate New York, and I went to a liberal arts state institution, a SUNY school, SUNY Fredonia,
Nice.
and got the bug there as it relates to campus life and campus engagement. And as a student, I just realized I wanted to be a part of shaping higher education for the future. And I did my master's at Bowling Green in Ohio, and then was recruited down here to Florida at the University of Central Florida to run a leadership program. And then I've been at Rollins for 20 years.
Nice.
So this is my vocation. It's my calling. And I love colleges and I love college students, which is why I'm so happy to be able to share and talk with you today.
Yeah. So, friends, just a little background. Rollins actually reached out to us. Somebody over there has some type of tool where they search the internet, and they searched and found out I did a college spotlight on Rollins like in 2018 or 2019. And so they listened and they liked it. And they said, it's been a while since you've talked about us. We think we've got a couple people within our network that could speak to your audience. So they suggested several topics. And I put them out to the rest of our co-hosts, and I told them to vote. And everybody chose the topic which we're going to talk about today, which is the importance of the first 6 weeks in college. And it's really important because we're increasingly trying to provide more content, not just on admissions, but for current college students to be successful when they actually get there. But before we start, Micki shared the coolest fact, and I want to get it in before I forget it. She is in a podcast studio. It's like a radio station. I'll let you say it in your own words. Rollins has a nice claim to fame in the whole entire South. Why don't you share it?
Yeah, so we're home to one of the oldest college radio stations in the United States. And our college radio station, WPRK 91.5 on the local dial here, but you can stream all over the world, help students understand the importance of voice and media, our DJs, our community and students, but also those who run the radio station are all students. So when we think about this idea of higher application, this is what it's all about. And fun fact, the first voice ever on WPRK was Dwight Eisenhower.
That's awesome. Awesome. So we are going to divide my time here with Micki into a focus on 3 different things. First is going to be priorities and balance. And then we're going to talk about the engagement and belonging. And then we're going to talk about academic adjustment. So let's start out with priorities and balance. So I'm just going to throw it right out to you, Micki. What makes the first 6 weeks so important? What is it about this period that shapes a student's entire first year?
So if you don't mind, I'm going to back up just a little bit.
You go where you need to go.
Thank you.
You're in charge.
Thank you. So, if you think about, and I know you have a lot of content on your podcast around getting into college. What does it take? Thinking about college essays. Where do you go? What's a good fit? What I find is so many juniors and seniors in high school spend a lot of time thinking about where they're going to go to college. They don't spend as much time thinking about what am I going to do when I get there? And a lot of people may not know the first 6 weeks on the college campus are some of the critical 6 weeks of the whole transition for college. In fact, there's a lot of data and there's a lot of research and theories that talk about the first 6 weeks. And I'm going to give you one for your listeners to think about right now. It's actually called the W curve. The W curve starts from the day a college student goes to campus and tracks them throughout that first semester. the emotional highs and lows around culture shock and adjustment and assimilation and integration that really help kind of frame those ups and downs. And ups and downs are very normal in the first 6 weeks. But I would say for anybody thinking of going to college or preparing the summer before, like anything, you need to have a plan. And the first 6 weeks really starts the day you say yes to your institution. And it's thinking about how you leverage your summer when you come onto campus and how you engage. So what I'd like to talk about, if that's okay, is like, what are some things to be thinking about for the first 6 weeks?
Yeah, and even are you going to cover the summer before you arrive? Because I think there's, people sometimes can do some things there to set themselves up.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's start with the summer first.
Yeah.
So after high school graduation, sometimes you wake up the next morning and think, oh my gosh, here we go. Here we go. I have the next 3 months to really prepare before I leave and go away to campus or I start the college journey. And you're going to hear me today, Mark. I talk in a lot of sometimes I use frameworks and acronyms, and that's just because I try to make the complex things sound more digestible. And I know you talk about access and accessibility. So when I think about the summer before college, I like to think about 5 S's. The 5 S's to frame your summer before college. The first thing I think that's really important is sleep and rest. So our high school students just went through an entire marathon of going to college, finishing senior year, all those major traditions. And it's really important before you start to get into the college going mindset, you take time to sleep, first S, sleep, and rest, and press the reset before. The second is, I think there needs to be really important time for socialization over the summer. And social means connecting with your friends and your family, doing the things that bring joy, that bring meaning to you, making actually time, dedicated time for doing that. The third S is sun or outdoors in nature. That could be travel, that could be getting outside, it could be snow, depending on where you are in the world, but making sure you're creating dedicated time for outdoors. So I just talked about 3 things that may not be on your checklist going to college, but those are 3 mind-body things that are going to be important down the line when we talk about the first 6 weeks of college. The final 2 will make a lot of sense. One is strategy and the second is skills. Summer needs to be about strategy and it needs to be about skills. Strategy, starting to think about what are the forms, the conversations, the orientations, the pre-college things that you need to do to get you college ready when you walk in that first day. The second are skills. And I'll tell you, Mark, skills in summer need to be inextricably connected your entire time you're a college student, because summer is really the time where you can build upon the essential skills that will prepare you for life after college. And so what do I mean by skills? Skills might mean having a job, making money, but also understanding what does it mean to work in a restaurant, to engage with other people, to deal with difficult problems and problem solving. Skills might mean your sport, continuing to double down on your sport if you're going to be a student athlete. Skills might also mean volunteerism and the work that comes from that. Skills could be, making sure that you're even engaging in interviews with the people that you want to be when you grow up or what you want to do for a career after. So your summer before college, again, those 5 S's, sleep and sun and social, strategy and skills.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
Is there anything related to you either understanding the college or getting plugged into the college? Now, I know in some cases, there's these groups out there where you're connecting with other students before you come. And some schools occasionally allow you to connect even with the adults. Like I've seen some where an advisor even checks in with you over the summer. Like, is there any recommendation before the student arrives of how they can either build a relationship or get a better understanding of what they're walking into?
That's a great question. I would couch that under strategy, and absolutely. The strategic way in which you use your time in the summer is truly, truly getting to know the institution that you're going to start with. And I believe it first starts with the mission. It's what does this college believe? What are their values? And the second is where are those ways to build the strategic connections to get to know the campus? One of the things I found is college and universities have very robust social media platforms where you may be able to engage with those classmates that are coming into your year. So say the class of, 2027 that's coming in. Parents, there's often social media pages for parents. The college's orientation programs, residential life programs, also reading email. All of those things become a part of the strategy for you to become a student of the institution before you step foot on the campus. Now, I often get the question of, do you need to be making all these friends before you go to college? I think I don't know. I don't have the right answer for that. I think for some students, it's very helpful to be able to have a network of people, especially if you're going far away and you don't know anybody. But the great thing about college and universities is we wake up every day and think about how can we get students to work together to make meaningful connections. So even if you don't have one friend before you start on your college journey, know that when you get to orientation, that's our job to be helping you do that.
When it comes to orientation, do you have any advice for a student? Let's say, think of two students. Let's say they both attend orientation. One gets a lot out of it. One gets nothing out of it. What did the one that got a lot out of it do to maximize the learning opportunity?
That is a great question.
I try.
These are great. These are really great. So I guess there's two mindsets that I'll talk about. The first is listen up, and the second is open up. So for the student who engages orientation with an open mindset, i.e., they're being an active listener, they're synthesizing and understanding a lot of information that's coming to them, and they're open to that. That's the student who's going to be really prepared when the race starts to start running. And for some students, that's going to be easier than others. I think for students who are naturally inclined to be in environments that are uncomfortable and unfamiliar, to meet people who are different, that might be a little bit easier than the student who this might be new to them, or many of their friend groups have been created for them before they go to campus. So you don't have to remember everything for orientation. In orientation, think about that as the backstage pass to the concert. College is the concert, the first 6 weeks. The orientation is really preparing you to be able to go into the arena to engage the work. So talking to people, asking them their stories, listening in and understanding what are the resources available for them, and also really trying to get to know the campus and even physically the way the campus is laid out, Mark, before the first day of class are all opportunities for you to be successful in orientation before the first day of school.
Great. Are we ready to jump into the first 6 weeks?
Let's do it.
Tell us what you want us to know, Micki.
Yeah. So we started with orientation, the listen up and open up work. The listening up is getting ready for orientation. It's being fully present. It's taking your phone and it's putting it away and being there in the moment to get to know the people, the resources, and the programs to set you up for success. We talked about open up. College is about new beginnings. It's about new people and ideas. It's about new freedoms. It's about doing things that you might not normally ever think that you could do. It also might be understanding different cultural opportunities, events, and programs. And, doing these things will help you create some of your best friends. The third thing about the first 6 weeks is creating healthy habits. And healthy habits is everything from how you care about others, how you care about yourself, creating a program for food, health, and wellness, because for many of your listeners, this is the first time they're going to be away from home. And maybe under their parents' roof, there was a set of things that they had to do. And then when you get to college, it's all open and different. And so you have to start to kind of create some of these patterns, starting to be listening to your body when it comes to sleep, starting to listen to the way that different foods work with your body and your system, having a plan for exercise, for health management, etc. So creating healthy habits in the first 6 weeks are critical. And then the last two that I think are really important are getting organized and getting involved. And I think we'll talk about this a little bit more in the podcast. But what getting organized means is if you're about to run a big race, you don't just start running. You need to think about what type of hydration do I need? How long is the race? Where could there be potential pitfalls? Where am I going to have to make adjustments? Getting organized around an academic plan for the first 6 weeks is critical, which means the first week, there's two things that really need to happen. First is getting your syllabi and starting to understand the course, what the course need, what are some of the assignments that are going to be due, who is the faculty member, how do they like to get work. And the second, which could be harder depending on the institution, is getting to know the person who is teaching your class personally. Every faculty member has office hours, or they work with teaching assistants who post office hours. And my challenge is in the first week, stopping by every faculty member's office hour just for them to lay their eyes on you and you to say, hey, I'm excited about your class. My name is Micki Meyer. Do you have any advice for me? And then finally, in the first 6 weeks, getting involved. So this is my jam. It's what I do every day and thinking about how students get involved. But the cool thing is research shows that students who get involved on campus in a student organization, an athletic team, a religious organization, a cultural experience, intramurals, will persist and retain at 2 times a higher rate than those who don't. And the way that you get to meet friends and get to know others is by getting involved early on in the first 6 weeks in student organizations, campus traditions, and they're all around you when you're a college student.
I really like all the points you made, but you spoke specifically about getting to know your professors. One of the families I worked with a couple times was a professor at CU Boulder, and he said he would first day put the office hours up and nobody would come, or hardly anybody would come. And he's like, this is such a great opportunity. And yet so few students take advantage of it.
You know, I think perhaps the reason why students don't take advantage of it at first is we forget that faculty are, we put them on a pedestal and we forget that they're human. We forget that the majority of them are vocationally called to be collaborators, to be teachers, to be researchers. And they've chosen to engage in this profession because of the education of college students. So imagine doing something you love so much and then someone showing up to your office and saying, hey, here I am, I'm excited. Imagine what that does for a student. Sometimes we feel like there's a separation between students and faculty, but truly the more that you can get to build community and relationship with faculty early on, the more excitement that builds, and I believe will help you become even more successful in that class when things may not go your way and when you might need additional support and help.
So, Micki, I like your point about get involved, but I could see someone saying, how do I do that? Like, I'm at this brand new place. I don't really know anybody. Like, how do I get involved?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a couple tricks to think about and things to look at. When I talked earlier about social media, and I know that not everybody is on social media, but it is a way in which people, offices, departments on college campuses do communicate with students. Most colleges, at least the 5 I've been to, and pretty much everyone I know, have something called an activities night, an involvement fair, and it generally happens the first 2 weeks of the college semester. So keep your eyes open, listeners, for the involvement fair. What happens at the involvement fair is it's generally going to be a big space where many of the student organizations come together and they have tables and they start to sign students up for clubs and organizations. Now, that's not the only way, but it is generally going to be the lead domino outside of orientation. The night, the kind of getting involved from the start, the night where you can go and engage and meet with a lot of different student organizations and start to think, what speaks to me? What do I want to explore? What am I curious about? Or what's something I've always wanted to do, but maybe I didn't have access or the opportunity to do that?
So what's going through my mind right now, Micki, are a few problems that could easily happen, and you've encountered these many, many times over. I'll just throw some of them out and like to see what you would say. But I'm thinking about the person that gets to the college and is thinking, oh my goodness, I think I might have made a mistake. It could be, I don't like my roommate, you know, it could be, the academics are really hard and then I had to do so much reading. It could be, I am so homesick. All this stuff is most likely to happen in the first 6 weeks. So let's say you're counseling somebody with maybe any or all of those situations. Academics are hard. I'm really homesick. I don't really like my roommate. What should they do?
Mm-hmm. I think the first thing that I do with students, well, first of all, I will say in 25 years, I've had thousands and thousands of students sit in my office with those same exact feelings. So the first thing I do is I help normalize them. Going off to college, or even if you're commuting or going online, it is one of the biggest life transitions that you will ever have. And there's going to be struggle. The classes are going to be harder or different. The friends are going to come from all different walks of life, all different places, possibly around the world, with different belief systems and values and cultures. The way that you're taking care of yourself and other people, all of that is going to change. And there's going to be ups and downs, as I talk about with the W curve, where things do feel really heavy and really hard. But what I try to do with students is have them understand the difference between struggle and suffer. There's going to be struggle in the work and getting to understand the academic rigors of college, or negotiating with a roommate that might be up all night, or a very messy room, or a very different way. There's going to be struggle in making good and poor choices, and maybe selecting your friends early on, or even feeling like there's some aloneness or isolation. Is helping for students understand that all of this is a part of the journey. It's a part of their story and experience, and there's strength in the struggle. And a piece of this is thinking about what resilience looks like. What we don't want students to do is to suffer. We don't want them to suffer alone. And what suffering looks like really is around serious and significant mental health challenges, or truly not being able to get out of bed because of despair or overwhelming feelings. That's where things, we talk about red flags. I get this question a lot. Those are some of the red flags in the first 6 weeks that parents need to be mindful of, and students need to be mindful of themselves. But it is going to be hard. I'll tell you, the group of students where I find engage in the struggle the most, and this might be surprising, are male students that come from high school that are a part of a sports team or a sports program, where many of their friendship groups and their activities have been prefabricated because of their involvement, and they come to college and they don't have that community. They've never had to build it. And that is struggle, and that's really hard.
Why do you think that's more prevalent with men? Because you could say women on the lacrosse team, the soccer team. Is it just, do you feel the young ladies are more social and they're able to connect easier? What is it about men?
I think there's a lot. I think we could do a whole other podcast
Okay.
around men in college right now. But
Okay.
So here's some of the other ones. I think sometimes, from a developmental standpoint, men and women develop very differently, and there's different parts of their brain that develop differently, especially around cognitive and psychosocial development. Just biologically, men are more, we'll say, they're not delayed, but they're a little bit further behind women in that regard. There are also a million less men in college today than there was 10 years ago. So on many college campuses, sometimes men might have a really hard time finding people who are like them. I also find that women are often social, and I'm speaking in broad terms. There are nuances in all of this. That women are more socialized to engage socially and to share some of the struggles, or to engage some of their emotions, where if men haven't had to ask for help, sometimes it can be really, really hard for them. But I'll tell you, all students struggle, all students struggle. But I have found that's one of the groups of students that I do get a lot of parents calling me. Is my son was a part of this baseball team, and he's always been surrounded our friends, and now he's having a really hard time making connections, and he doesn't know what to do, and I don't know what to do. It's a pretty interesting phenomenon. I think it's something that colleges have to really tune into as well, thinking about how do we create the conditions for all students to thrive and all students to make meaningful networks and connections when they're here.
Yeah, no, because maybe you work on forming a club sport if you didn't have a club sport, so that they can find their community that way.
I have to tell you, if I had millions of dollars, I would deeply invest in intramural sports. Because what we do see is that sports is a way for students to make connections in a thoughtful, meaningful way on college campuses. And even here, our intramural sports programs, they are really busting at the seams. And it's a way for people to come together and make connections. We also have 125 student organizations on campus, but the intramural sports, there's a lot that can happen on a sports field that relates to opening up, listening up, building resilience, etc. That sometimes for some students goes away after high school. That's so important as they get to college.
Friends, this concludes part 1 of 3 of my interview with Micki Meyer. Hope you join us next week for part 2. All right, friends. On Thursday's episode, you're going to continue to hear more from Micki Meyer on the importance of the first 6 weeks. And we're going to have a question from a listener, which you're going to have to tune in then to find out what it is, because I haven't decided yet. I'm trying to pick and decide, trying to see what's speaking to the times. And then we have a college spotlight that Lisa Linda did on the University of Chicago. Linda's daughter just graduated. Lisa's a grad. Trying to clear up some misperceptions about the university that they feel are out there and that are rampant. And so they'll take that on. Well, friends, you know how I feel. When it comes to picking a college, when it comes to choosing a college, it's not where you go. It's not where you go. It's not where you go, but it's what you do when you get there. And it's what you do when you get out of there. That is what will determine your career success. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us. You will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about YCBK on social media. And you help us stay commercial free and pay our staff by donating at yourcollegeboundkid.com and clicking the donate button. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. If you have a question or suggestion, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK and hit the orange button and speak, and we will do our best to get your question or your comment in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I'm the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admission and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, 2 admission officers from Colorado, Hillary Dickman from Colorado College, Kate Strickland from CU Boulder, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, Heath Einstein, the Chief Enrollment Officer at TCU in Fort Worth, Carter DeLauro, a co-director of college counseling in New York, and Christina Lopez, the former Dean of Admission at Barnard College, and our international college specialist, Kevin Newton from Dallas, Texas. Our stupendous sound engineer who makes everything happen is Nemanja Matvic from Serbia. Our reliable webmaster is John Rooney. Website updates are done by Joy Stucker. Image editing by Vlad Honchar. And what would we do without our volunteers? Guy Pillsbury, Sony Patel, and Andy Bernstein are all helping us with podcast marketing. Carolyn Wood, Mark Doniger, and Carrie Roberts book interviews with thought leaders. Amanda Dugan, Colleen Sinoki, Nicole Resch, Trevor Smith, Ryan Stepler, and Lynn Labash send thank yous to interviewees. If you want a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly newsletter, YCBK Plus, it's also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights and our upcoming events and receptions. And you can now do searches for past content by using our new Explore and Topics tabs. We really encourage you to explore our past content. We have close to 1,000 hours. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.